Hello and welcome to New Awakening Theology. In this video, we will discuss Christ's commandment, watch and pray. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons so you won't miss any future videos. Now, reading from Matthew 26:41, we read, "Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Now, Jesus went to Gethsemane, which means an oil press. There was a garden there, covered with olive trees. There, Jesus left his disciples, except for Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, James and John, who went with him to pray. Gethsemane was just outside the boundary of Jerusalem and was the regular campsite for Jesus and his disciples during the week of Passover. The city was extremely overcrowded this week, so most Passover pilgrims camped out in various areas around Jerusalem. If they'd gone somewhere else that night, they could have foiled Judas's plan to betray Jesus. But Jesus chose not to evade the fate he had predicted. Jesus chose to accept his fate not as a regrettable necessity, but as his Father's will. Jesus was experiencing sorrow and trouble such as he had never known in his earthly life. He asked the three disciples to stay and keep watch with him. Jesus separated himself from Peter, James, and John and began to pray. He prayed, asking that if possible, this cup be taken away from him. Now, some scholars feel that the cup Jesus was speaking of referred to his imminent death on the cross. Others think that Jesus was speaking of his coming separation from the Father. You can see this in Matthew 27:46. And his coming contact with sin as he became sin for mankind. You can see this in 2 Corinthians 5:21. Now, in the Old Testament, a cup figuratively refers to wrath. Somehow, the significant thing about this prayer was that the Lord submitted his will to the will of his Father. This is from Matthew 26:39. When he returned to the place where he had left Peter, James, and John, he found them asleep. Jesus woke them up, reprimanded Peter for his inability to bear with him in prayer. After all, Peter had just said in Matthew 27:33-35 that he would never forsake Jesus. But he could not even stay awake to pray with Jesus. Now, Jesus encouraged the three to keep watching and praying. But he did acknowledge the human flesh's weakness. A second time, Jesus went to pray and affirmed that God's will must be accomplished, whatever the cost. He returned and found the three disciples asleep again, but this time he did not wake them. A third time he prayed the same prayer while the disciples continued to sleep. Their sleeping and resting were in stark contrast to his praying to the point of exhaustion. Though the disciples were nearby, they were useless when it came to helping Jesus pray. Yet Jesus was determined to follow the Father's will regardless of the cost. When Jesus returned to the disciples a third time, he woke them up with the news that his betrayer was coming, and they must go to meet him. As Christians, we must watch and pray that we will have the strength to do the Father's will. If we become tired or in our own walk with Jesus and are distracted by the things of this world, if we are not vigilant, if we give into the weakness of the flesh, when our Judas or whoever or whatever it is may be tries to betray us, then we must wake up, turn to Jesus, and go with him In Matthew 26:46, Jesus called his disciples and he calls us to rise. Let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. Now, this is not a call to retreat, but rather a call to advance, to meet the coming enemy. Now, in my next video, we'll talk about Christ's commandment, feed my lambs. Thanks, and have a great day.